If you want to understand the way Japanese people communicate, think, build relationships, and build their life on a minute-to-minute, hour-to-hour, day-to-day basis, you need to understand the drinking culture in Japan. It might be the most important thing to understand if you want to avoid kind of like awkward pitfalls with meeting new people here. Why is that? Because the drinking culture in Japan is not actually about drinking. It's not about having fun with your friends or having fun with your coworkers. It's about relationship dynamics and the kind of unique way relationships work in Japan, the way people communicate or don't communicate their feelings in Japanese culture. And I think in order to understand the drinking culture, you need to understand keigo and just kind of the way people form relationships in Japan. Relationships in Japan are very different than the way relationships are formed in the US. Friendships, professional relationships, romantic relationships, it's all different. In general, just making a generalization, things are built step by step. So you'll have defined steps that go through each kind of level of where you stand in somebody's life. If you meet somebody for the first time, you'll speak in this Japanese. If you meet 3 times, you'll switch to this Japanese. You'll switch the way you say I. There's different ways to say I in Japanese. Tashi, boku, ore. If you're a guy, especially, there's many different ways to refer to yourself. You kind of adjust that over time. As you get closer to somebody and you want to present yourself differently, you'll switch to a different version of I, right? And it's very important to understand this concept because this is kind of like a mini condensed version of what happens at these drinking parties, events, everything in Japan. Because why do people do these drinking events? Because there are these set, defined roles and speed and steps for how you get to know somebody, how you become closer, how you form friendships. Drinking parties are a way for you to not only speed up that process temporarily, which is the very important bit. It's temporary, which is very difficult to understand, I think, if you're not from Japan. But it's a way for you to speed up that process temporarily, and it's a way for you to allow for everybody to say that we're going to drop all of these social conventions, all of the things that are expected for like 3, 4, 5 hours. We're just going to forget about all of that, and anything goes. And there's a word for that in Japanese. There's a word for what I just explained there. It's bureko. Bureko means that basically anything goes at the nomikai. What happens at nomikai stays at nomikai. Nomikai is the word for like a drinking event or party in Japanese. So what happens at nomikai stays at nomikai. So it's a very different dynamic than what you'll see in a Western country, at least in America, because in America, I think we have this idea that if you're going to drink with somebody and talk with somebody, if somebody just instantly changes their personality because they're going to the drinking party, that's like kind of disingenuous. It seems like you can't really trust that person, right? But in Japan, that's actually a sign that the person can understand social cues well, that they can understand, like they can read the air. That's a very important phrase in Japanese. Kukiyoyomu. Kukiyoyomu is reading the air, reading the atmosphere, reading the room. So it's it proves your ability to read the air, to read the room. And people will actually trust you more if you're able to navigate these different dynamics that allow you to kind of adjust your personality depending on who's in the room, depending on the situation you're in, right? So drinking parties in general are a way for you to go out with different kinds of people that you will have different social dynamics with, and they allow you to drop all of that and temporarily kind of see a different side of them that you probably wouldn't ever get to see. But as I kind of mentioned earlier, and this is where I've run into a lot of pitfalls, I've heard other foreigners in Japan running into these similar pitfalls. Kind of an important thing to remember that goes with the bureko thing is that just because somebody is nice to you at a drinking party, or just because somebody opens up, or you guys are best friends at the drinking party, that doesn't mean that you guys are going to be best friends the next day. In fact, it can be kind of depressing, in my opinion, because you'll go to these drinking parties, and especially if you're a foreign guy, you probably have a higher alcohol tolerance than most Japanese people, and so you're going to be probably one of the only people that isn't really drunk at the end of these things. So, for me, it's, I had a lot of experiences where I have some deeper conversations at these parties or something. The next day I meet whoever I'm talking to at the party, and it's just like, konnichiwa. Like they're back to being this very distant, kind of Japanese relationship that's built upon these kind of expected perceived boundaries. And you hit the wall of that. Once the nomikai is over, you go pretty much back to square one. So that to me is like, I actually don't mind nomikai. I know people hate them. I don't mind it. Also, I'm a guy, so that's a factor as well. I'm sure it's much worse if you're a Japanese woman and you're going to these things and you're expected to pour, your boss's beer and everything. What always kind of gets to me though is at the end of it, the next day you meet the person and it's like you've never even talked before. And to me, that's a very strange phenomenon, to like act like you're best friends with somebody and then the next day pretend like nothing ever happened. It is a very uniquely Japanese thing that is quite extreme. And it's something that you need to kind of watch out for, because if you don't have the ability to switch back, they're not going to forgive you for it. You only are forgiven at the nomikai. Of course, since you're a foreigner, you'll probably get a little bit more leeway. If you're not a Japanese native, they'll give you a little bit more leeway with that kind of thing. But I think, something I noticed over my years in university going to these drinking parties is people don't really understand that this is a uniquely Japanese thing. They think this is kind of like how the world works everywhere. They don't understand that, like that, they call it kirikai in Japanese, like that switching on and off of your personality. They don't understand that that's a very Japanese thing to do. And so you're not going to get a whole lot of sympathy with that unless you're talking to other people who are from outside of Japan, I think. And it's important to keep that in mind, that this is a very normal thing here. And even though nomikai, like the expectation for people to go to the nomikai or to go and drink with their boss has really gone down in recent years, I think companies are acknowledging that it can be a little bit abusive to force their employees to go to these things. It's still very much a part of Japanese culture. And even when you don't have a nomikai in your company, you're still going to have nomikai with your friends. And if there are people that you haven't met dozens, hundreds of times, there's going to be some element of it to that where you're going to have a lot of, kind of camaraderie, some things you'll only talk about when you're drinking, and then the next time you meet them, they might act completely different, and you need to kind of be prepared for that. So, my advice for that is just to go into every situation, just being polite, friendly, and not having any expectations of what's going to happen around you, and adjust to what they're doing. And I think that, that mentality has saved me a lot of trouble in Japan. So I hope you guys found that interesting. Yeah, if you guys are interested in these kind of cultural, psychological kind of topics, I talk about this kind of thing a lot on my channel, and I think you would find one of these videos very interesting. Obviously, I'd appreciate you subscribing to my channel as well, but either way, thank you very much for your time in watching this video, and I hope you found it informative. Thanks, guys. Have a great day or night wherever you are. See ya.